I want to tell AOC.
Oh, here we go. What's up? What's up?
Going to let this continue.
Yeah, I can hear you. What's up?
For
You're on
more than
screen
10
now.
years,
You're
they
on
couldn't
camera.
get it open.
All right,
It
cool.
was
Hey, buddy.
a
Have you
couldn't
ever
get
seen
it
one of these
finished. They
before,
couldn't get
Hasan?
it built.
Have I ever seen one of these what?
One of these rallies before?
Yes.
Like-
Not in person, but I used to watch all of the Trump rallies back in the day.
I've never done one of these like all the way through.
I used to watch all of the rallies all the way through, like so many of them.
God. So if
I
you've
looked at
watched
what
through
is
all
going
of
on
these, what are some of
years
the
and
things
years.
that
So I
like you
volunteered,
notice about
and I took over the
Trump's
project,
tendencies in these
and,
rallies that don't
did a
get
good
talked
job.
about very often?
It's always
Right.
it's always the same.
And when
He
I
always
took
brings
it
up the
over, I
same
said
stuff.
that
Like he has
if it costs
he
more
does
than
like a
$2
comedian. He has like a
million, I
tight
would pay for
I guess a
it,
tight
the
hour
entire amount.
that he rolls out every single time. We literally have like we will do sometimes we'll have like bingo. Like we'll play bingo and gamble on with fake points on whether or not he's going to say certain things. But it's very predictable. It's always the same stuff. It's always like anti-immigrant screed. I would say that in recent years his anti-immigrant stuff has gotten even more wild. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he'll hit that and talk about like undocumented immigrants or whatever here. Usually he's just very sassy and, you know, I guess very telegenic and very charismatic to that audience specifically whenever he talks about his own personal gripes like hairspray or things of that nature.
As you know, then I renovated Grand Central Terminal. I built the Grand Hyatt Hotel on 42nd Street and Park Avenue. And as part of that, I renovated the beautiful Grand Central Terminal, did a really good job of that. And then I was very much responsible for the construction.
It's ironic when he talks about all these constructions and it's like all of it is like riddled with scandal where he refused to pay contractors on a regular basis.
And it's like what everybody in New York knows this. Like he knew it far before he ran for president. Like, so my dad was an architect. He had this small business in the Bronx. And so he was always we're always at these job sites. And we're with contractors and we're with the unions and the workers and stuff like that, trying to figure out like what housing that can be built in the area and whatnot. And it was known to everybody in the 90s that anyone who worked in real estate or construction or anything like this always knew that like you shouldn't, especially if you were a smaller guy or smaller business, you should not do business with this dude because he just fleeced everybody. He just like was always not paying bills, screwing people over. Every single person knew this and like how corrupt he was as well. And I mean, he went broke in Atlantic City. This guy has gone broke so many times. And it's just been like this shell game of trying to figure out who can lend him more and more money while he tries to like con someone else out of it. And he's gone what? Like, how old is this guy now? Like is he 80 something? He's in his 80s now, like just having lived his whole life without a real job. Yeah.
7 bankruptcies. Bankrupted a casino, which is like, you know, that's actually kind of
You have to see the lines
impressive.
outside the
It is impressive.
You know, I agreed to do a debate with crooked Joe Biden on CNN with Fake Tapper. And I think they'll be fair. Does anybody think they'll be fair? I might be. No. That's all right. Then they said today, we'd like to set up tables so you sit down. I said, I don't want to sit down for a debate. Let's go. At some point, so we're not sitting down. We're going to be standing up for the debate. And here's what you know.
It should be reminded to everyone that he almost killed Joe Biden last time when he had COVID and was like,
yeah, that's right.
He
like, is that what he did? He had like had COVID.
He had COVID.
He, like, and like didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Shake my hand, Biden. Come on, be a man. I'm coughing into it.
All of them. So Russia going into Ukraine would have never happened. None of this stuff that you see would have happened.
God.
Israel would have never happened, the attack on October 7th, and you wouldn't have had inflation.
Israel,
as soon
direct
as I get
consequence
back
of
into
the Abraham
Oval Office,
Accords and many of Jared Kushner's and Donald Trump administration's actions, like moving the embassy to Jerusalem.
10,000.
He is just as responsible for October 7 as anyone else. The fact that he is saying like Israel would have never happened, October 7th would have never happened is ridiculous when it directly happened as a direct consequence of him moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the annexed territory of Golan Heights as Israeli territory, going against international law, and also conducting the Abraham Accords, completely sidestepping the Palestinians from the conversation. That is a major reason.
Very happy. We were the most respected country in the world 4 years ago. We were respected more than our country was ever respected 4 years ago. And now we're being laughed at. We're like a joke.
Do you feel like
and that's
the
not
way
gonna happen.
this
That's
has
not gonna happen.
changed?
We're going to do
Like when you're watching him conduct this now, and the way he used to do his rallies, have they changed much at all, or have they remained pretty consistent?
It's pretty consistent. I mean, the they're laughing at us narrative is pretty funny because for
Yeah.
obvious reasons, like one, America and its like global influence certainly got worse under the Trump administration. But beyond that, he also used to say exactly that about Obama. Like he would say that was like a major talking point for him in his earlier rallies all the way since 2016. He has definitely, I think he's just gotten boring, and he also no longer has the outsider effect that made him, especially against someone like Hillary Clinton, made him seem like an interesting person that people could
like
bet
refreshing.
on. But when he was president for 4 years, and people still remember it, all the chaos and all the instability, it becomes a lot harder to maintain that outsider's posture.
Are before me today, we are going to make life in New York affordable again. It's gotten totally out of control. The minute crooked Joe Biden shuffles out the door, I will rapidly rebuild the greatest economy, the history of the world. Look, we had the greatest economy in history. Everybody here, where you have a small business or if you had a job, you were getting more than you ever made. And we had no inflation. We had no 1.4%, considered better than none, because frankly, none in its own way is a bad thing also. We had a
The
perfect
Economist
number, 1.4%.
This is the only avenue of attack against the Biden administration that is like actually pretty salient, I would say.
Yeah.
Because that is like universally the number one thing both Democrats and Republicans criticize this administration on. Despite the fact that inflation obviously is, I mean, there's many different ways of dealing with it, but we never engage in any sort of like, we never engage in legislative action to combat inflation. No deflationary mechanisms exist in the minds of American politicians for the most part, and only monetary policy. So
we had great people.
Exactly. I mean, and one of the best actually pursues with antitrust. Like, we need to break them up. Like, we need to break up a lot of these massive corporations and companies and be aggressive in going after them. And the one bright spot in this is Lena Khan at the FTC.
Oh yeah,
she's like DOJ today announcing that they're going after Ticketmaster. She's but Lena Khan at the FTC has been
going after Amazon,
going after all of them, going after Amazon. They even went after certain consumer protections, like Rite Aid started rolling out the facial recognition AI in their cameras, and this starts just sending tons of people to jail, and it's like notoriously unreliable, and also there's a lot of algorithmic racial bias in these. But yeah, so they started going after them, and Rite Aid got a judgment against them. The problem is that we need more Democrats when we actually have the gavels in these places to do antitrust policy, and there's just like so much corrupt influences from these large lobbies, especially in tech. I actually think there's like a huge amount of influence in tech, and a lot of Democrats that take corporate money. I think that's one of the reasons why antitrust doesn't get as much legislative momentum. But we do have people, again, like Lena Khan, that are doing an awesome job.
They're the ones that are affected most by what's happening. Not only the fact that you've lost the use of your schools, your parks, and your hospitals. Joe Biden's inflation.
I love New Yorkers in the Bronx chanting "Build the Wall."
I was just gonna say, chanting "Build the Wall" in the middle of the Bronx. It's insane.
People saying like people having anti-immigrant sentiment in New York, one of the most diverse places on the planet, is ridiculous.
Wall, and it was going to bid. We're going to add 200 miles of wall. It would have taken about 3 weeks. And then we had the rigged election. And you know what happened after the rigged election? They took the wall, and instead of putting it up, they sold it for 5 cents on the dollar. And I said, these people really do want to have an open border. And that's
this is another aspect. I mean, I am a lot more critical of the Biden administration, obviously very publicly. But this is another aspect of like the Trump conversation that is very frustrating, because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, well, you know, build the wall, build the wall. Meanwhile, Biden has pushed through a funding mechanism that will literally complete the border wall while also simultaneously administration doing eminent domain too. In order to continue building the wall, which I think is both bad policy and bad politics in general. But these people don't care because, you know, they are operating on pure resentment. And that is partially the reason why we shouldn't ever capitulate to the right-wing framing on immigration, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of the issues that I think frustrates me the most, because this is where we see some of the most capitulation to the right. And the problem is that this resentment will never be fed. And so very often I'll see like Democrats trying to like play this political game, like this whole thing with HR2 and this border bill that with Republicans, and trying to do this whole thing about, oh, like we came up with a tough border bill and Republicans rejected it as though it was some kind of solution. But the problem is that like we've been through so many cycles of this where Trump or Republicans in general or Fox News, they'll do this whole like racial panic thing and incite this whole sense of an emergency or chaos on the border. And then it resonates in Washington, D.C. And all these Democrats start freaking out, and they cobble together some bill that plows a bunch more money to CBP, plows a bunch more money into border facilities. And sometimes they will put money towards like some good things too. Like they will all in the same bill. They will have money for CBP and ICE, but then they'll also put in a lot of money to like HHS and like the kids centers and like the humanitarian centers and stuff like that. But the problem is that none of this resource stuff solves the problem. Right now, CBP is the largest law enforcement force in the United States. The thing is like they'll pour and pour and pour all these resources, all these new technologies, everything. But the problem is not about money. The problem is that we don't have a path to citizenship in the United States. And not only that,
it's a processing issue, and they never talk about it. Or Democrats used to talk about it from the framework of like immigration is a problem. It's not even a problem at all, but it's like it's at its most, it is a problem with the legal status that these people do not have. The solution to it is to immediately open up pathways to citizenship. And then the undocumented migrants can also work alongside the documented workforce and unionize and be able to demand a larger piece of the pie. And yet it is maintained as a depressive force on the wages, specifically due to the legal status. And it's shocking to me that the Democratic Party across the board is now kind of capitulating to the right-wing framing on the issue, considering it to be a issue of national security, which is like you've given the game up at that point. You've ceded territory for no reason to the right wing on immigration, and now all of a sudden all you've done is basically legitimize their position that it is actually a matter of national security when it's not. When there are studies done on this issue, not many, but the ones that do, studies that have been conducted on the matter show that undocumented immigrants are responsible for less crime per capita than documented U.S.-born individuals. So the idea that like they are causing extra crime is silly. So
no, it totally is. And what's even crazier about it is that we are in such a desperate need for people to fill huge swaths of labor in the United States. I mean, so many of these Republican states are rolling back child labor laws right now. Like 14-year-olds are getting hurt in meat processing facilities because they're rolling back child labor laws because they're so desperate for workers. And they're so xenophobic that they don't want immigrants to contribute to these local economies. But like, I mean, even when I was on the road with Bernie in 2020, we'd go to places, Nebraska, Iowa, etc. And a lot of these communities that are feeding the entire country, like core, you want to talk about a national security issue. One big national security issue is that like our increased inability to feed ourselves if our labor force and our workforce starts to fall apart, not be able to get fulfilled. Plus, you do that, plus the issues with climate change, with people not even being able to work the same hours because it's getting so hot during harvest season. Like these are the actual structural issues that we need to address. As long as we do not actually expand people's ability to get in the, like people talk about getting in line, like there's no line, but if we made a line, if we actually created an ability for people to actually become a citizen in some sort of and apply for citizenship in a normal way, that you don't have to be in a, get a 30-year wait in order to come to this country, then we'd be able to actually have the labor infrastructure necessary to serve huge parts of the country. But it's like, it is wild. Like, and the depressive forces on wages is very real too. Like, I've spoken with a lot of our building trades and our union workers in construction, and you have like all of these real estate developers that are acting in very predatory ways, trying to find undocumented laborers in order to put up their buildings. These laborers, it's very dangerous for them because they're not covered by OSHA. There was like this huge spate a couple years ago where so many undocumented people were dying on these job sites, and it is a lot, and that's what's turned a lot of unions around on immigration. Like the Teamsters notoriously, ironically, but they notoriously like had a very different stance on immigration, but because they realized that undocumented people like want to join a union, and if they were able to join a union, we wouldn't have this effect where it would sink everyone's wages down, but it would actually raise them up. It forced them to change their stance on immigration.
Noam Chomsky's daughter, Aviva Chomsky, wrote a phenomenal book on this called Undocumented: How Immigration Became Illegal. For those of you who are interested, that specifically details like how the Bracero program and onward, how like America had a plan to basically create a never-ending pool of labor that they could hyper exploit in comparison to like the documented American labor force, and use it as a use this two-tier labor structure to further depress wages in the United States of America. It's always been, the status of not being documented is a deliberate one caused by those who want to increase profit margins for capital owners. And not only that, but if there was any sort of real restriction, if we did have this like truly white nativist, white supremacist attitude towards like black and brown people coming into the country, then you would see significant punishments towards those like Purdue and I'm talking about the chicken processors, like the agricultural industry in its entirety that relies on undocumented labor and very specifically designs their profit margins around undocumented labor, that even will in certain instances call ICE on their own plants if like the workers there decide to demand back pay or complain too much. And the reality is, like, if we did really want to punish, if we really wanted to stop undocumented immigration in this country, then we would punish the corporations, but we don't. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing anyway. I don't think that this country has no more room for additional people, and there's no lump of labor unless you create a two-tier process between undocumented workers and documented laborers. Anyway, let's get back to Trump,
Dropping
though.
bombs all over the place. I'm so tired of politics. Can we devote 6 minutes to success? Okay.
Oh boy.
So
he's on his right-wing podcast. There are
through tremendous.
Yeah,
I've had
really
great
is.
success. I've had
He's gonna
entertainment.
start talking about how to get a girlfriend and stuff.
He's gonna start selling his course.
Did you run for president? If you didn't work really hard, there is very little chance that I would be standing here right now. Another part of success is something I learned from my father. I had a wonderful father, wonderful parents. I'm lucky. You got to be lucky. You got to get great parents.
Be born.
If you're going to spend your life work to
Bro,
do it. I mean,
your father was massively wealthy, and so were you. This is like, I don't think this works with people. I think like talking about success in business is going to only remind them that like he was born with a silver spoon.
He totally was born. I mean, he married multi-generational wealth. And it's like wild to me. Well, here's the thing that I love is that with people like this, they talk so much about working hard, and they're like, oh, you got to work really hard. Like, I worked really hard for this. Ask someone like that what they did. Like, what did your days actually look like? What did you actually do? And it's like took a phone call, like, oh, wow, you had like a really long lunch with somebody. Like, that to them is what work is, like schmoozing with other wealthy people.
Yeah, golfing, cutting checks. And that's why I love Elon Musk buying Twitter and like ruining it permanently, because he showed everyone that, you know, billionaires with multiple jobs don't actually do anything, because he's tweeting all goddamn day. He tweets more than I do, you know, and that's what Trump used to do when he was president, and even when he wasn't president. So,
and I'd say, how did you price in those days, Dad? He said pricing was everything. He said, I'd sell a house for $3,999.99.
There ain't no way.
And that one penny made the difference between selling it and not. One penny.
Talking about
if
house
I made
prices.
it $4,000, I wouldn't sell. But psychologically, $3,999.99.
This dude, I can't even understate how much of a slumlord model like that he represents, and is like, we talk about so much about rent going up. I mean, in New York City, it is actually insane, but across the country, it's actually insane.
Only
Rent,
5%.
mortgage,
According to Curb.com, only 5% of New Yorkers can actually, or I think like only 5% of availability of rental properties is in the average New Yorker salary range.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of transactions now for places that are being bought in New York City, all cash transactions. It is so unstable and it's so precarious, even just structurally for the city. Like, for all these people who are buying all cash properties, like who is going to be able to even participate in the service economy that these people like to luxuriate in, when only 5% of the current housing market is even affordable to everyday people? I mean, this is like, it's actually crazy. There's a coalition, there's like a left coalition in the state assembly that they're trying to push for a lot more housing protections. It didn't quite go through in this session, but a lot of our DSA state level electeds were fighting for like good cause eviction and a lot of other tenant protections as well.
Yeah.
And Bill Levitt was there, and I was in the real estate business, so I knew who he was, and you probably indirectly know who. Everybody was shunning him a little bit. Nobody cared about him anymore. But I did, and I went over to him, and I say, hi, Mr. Levitt, I'm Donald Trump. I know it. I was doing great. I was sort of like a hot guy. I was hot as a biscuit.
Oh, God.
I think I was hotter than I am now, and I became president, okay? I don't know.
Oh, my God.
I said to somebody, was I hotter before or hotter now? I don't know. Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows?
Don't
who the
know,
hell
like,
cares, right?
Who sits this and watches this and is like, I'm inspired.
I said, so...
Like, this
Are you okay? And he
this
said,
does it for me.
I'm not. And finally, you have to take pride in your accomplishments. Do not take for granted what you've achieved. Forget it. It's over. It's good for your confidence, but it's over. Go forward. Think to the future, not to the past, but learn
like
from the
graduation.
past.
It's like his commencement.
Yeah. He's,
you know, wherever
for
I go,
Trump
I know that if I
University.
could
this is very different. This is very different than his other speeches. I've never seen him talk about success this much, and I think it's probably because like he wanted to recalculate, like retriangulate his speech to the audience that he's listening to he's speaking to. So I don't think he can be like as racist, I guess he assumes, 'cause he's in the Bronx.
I think that's what it is. He had to cut the whole like racism bit, and so he's gonna try to do this like
normally he would be spending this entire block talking talking about migrants and how they're like rapists and
Well, I
murderers and stuff like
I
that.
find it interesting though, because they did want to like seize on and try to exploit the asylum issue and like all of the busing from DeSantis to New York City. They wanted to use that. They wanted to like kind of seize on the public safety stuff, and he's not really doing that here. He's like decided to do this, I don't even know, like pseudo inspirational type of thing. And I wonder what led them to make that recalculation.
I think because he understands that ultimately the broader New York community cares more about inflation, and this hits Biden harder. He can tell poor people, he'll tie it back to how, see, he's like tying it back to how he was making America great and the economy was good, considering that that's the number one most salient issue for Biden voters as well as Republican voters, instead of talking about like migrant panic, which works really well in like southern
called the migrant crime. We have a migrant crime happening now. You add that to the crime.
He's getting into it now.
A terrible
there we
statistic.
go.
Venezuela was a very crime-ridden country. They just announced a month ago 67, but now they just announced 72% reduction in crime in Venezuela. In Caracas, they took their gang members, they took their drug dealers, they're taking everybody that's a problem and they're dumping them into the United States of America. We're like a dumping ground. But many countries are doing that. I would say eventually all countries would be doing that. Large numbers of people are coming in from China. And if you look at these people, did you see them? They are physically fit. They're 19 to 25. Almost everyone is a male. And they look like fighting age. I think they're building an army. They had 29,000 people over the last... I think they're building... They want to get us from within. I think they're building an army. This is not... You know, it's interesting. Did you see them? They all have tents. They all have gas-fired stoves. I mean, this is not like an illegal immigrant. This is, they're building something. They have something in mind. We will immediately begin the largest criminal deportation operation in our country's history, because this situation is sustainable
like that dude,
by no country. No country.
The hands that you can see are all black and brown hands that are going, yeah, hell yeah. Like the ones that you can see, it's like the rest of the country would view them just like they have very famously on numerous occasions told you, Alexandria, that you know, you don't belong here, that you're not a legacy American. It is not done on the virtue of your immigration status. You've been in this, your family's been in this country for longer than, you know, Donald Trump's family has. But it seems like he is seen as more of a legacy American than you for some weird reason. A lot of those people don't recognize that, I think.
17 million people.
No,
and these are not
this
necessarily people
super seriously, because I mean, not even like separate just from an immigration question. This is kind of the groundwork of fascism, right? Where you start to not only identify targets and social classes that you seek to subjugate, but also this idea of building up a kind of an internal army, right, in order to justify his continued use of and building up of CBP and kind of the wielding Homeland Security forces, which notoriously don't have a good jurisdiction. And this then. We've seen this. We saw this around Black Lives Matter protests, even before that with the Dakota XL pipeline and everything that's going on. It is the use of Homeland Security, which the resources get pumped into because of this anti-immigrant rhetoric, and then they turn around with these new resources due to that political toxicity, and they wield it on journalists, they wield it on surveillance of activists, they wield it on all sorts of cities and different places where people are organizing around grassroots mass popular movements. I mean, this is like just the playbook here. This is the playbook here.
BORTAC, the Special Weapons and Tactics unit for ICE, for CBP, that gets training literally like overseas, was very much functional during the Portland wing of the Black Lives Matter protest. They were, you know, black bagging and tagging people in unmarked vans.
They had drones over these protests. I mean, This is the part that's like actually quite scary, quite scary.
Illegal immigration, but this has to do with illegal immigration, and I think it's very accurate, actually.
Oh, is he
and
doing the
very
snake
sad.
story?
But I'll go and we'll
See,
do
this
it.
is a
and
classic.
Some of you have heard it. And
Okay,
many
I don't
of you
know this
haven't.
one.
But we're going to do it right now for the great people of the Bronx.
You knew what I was when you brought me in. It's a poem. It's a fascist poem that he loves reading.
This is that scorpion thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
On her work, and you know what? You know what this is all about, right? Did you know? You've heard this before? Have you heard it?
See, this is
We
type
got the
5. He's like, you
greatest
guys
people
want
here.
this.
On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor half-frozen snake. His pretty colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. Poor thing, he said. I'll take you in, and I'll take care of
Fascist
you.
poetry, man.
Take me in, oh tender woman.
Never thought
Take
I'd see
me in,
it.
for heaven's sake. Take me in, oh tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. She wrapped him up all cozy in a comforter of silk and laid him by the fireside with some honey and some milk. She hurried home from work that night, and soon as she arrived, she found the pretty snake she'd taken in had been revived. Take me in, oh tender woman, take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, oh tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. She clutched him to her bosom. You're so beautiful, she cried.
A chain
But if I
email
hadn't
that
got you
old
in by
people
now,
used to
you
forward to
truly
each
would have
other all the
died.
time, like back in the early
Skin
2000s.
again and
Yeah.
kissed and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, ma'am, the snake gave her a vicious bite. Take me in, oh tender woman, take me in for heaven's sake. Take me in, oh tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. I saved you, cried the woman, and you've bitten me, but why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die. Shut up, silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in. Right? So when we allow people from prisons, when we allow people from insane asylums and mental institutions, which are being emptied out all over the world, you know, their prison populations are going way down. You know why? Because they're being dumped into the United States. When we are allowing terrorists at numbers that we've never seen before, remember the snake. Remember the snake. Because you're going to get bitten like you never got bitten before, and you need a new president, and you have to get rid of this person who is not a smart person, not a respected person, and doesn't have a clue what the hell is happening. In recent years, we have also seen our city destroyed by bad, radical left, pro-crime policy that virtually everyone, Republican, Democrat, Independent, everyone, you all know it's a disaster. You know the names of these lunatic.
This was the OG failure, in my opinion. Like even in the midterms, when Democrats also capitulated to the crime panic, which was completely fabricated by local media and also the very same police departments. Then turned around and were like, actually, we didn't get defunded, and also actually crime is down.
My favorite is Walgreens.
Yeah, it is. And yes, Walgreens CFO very famously publicly apologized for saying, okay, maybe we exaggerated a little bit the way that crime was, the way that crime was causing us to shut down our brick and mortar retail stores. Ridiculous stuff. And that should have been the first indication that like capitulation to right-wing framing is obviously going to be devastating policy, which in my opinion caused the likes of Lee Zeldin and even George Santos, who I apparently is at this rally right now.
Oh yeah, I saw something about that.
To flip a district and also to gain more legitimacy, more prominence in New York politics. There's no way.
And I also want to work with your mayor and your governor, happen to be Democrats, to clean up the homeless encampments so that you can once again enjoy your parks and your public spaces. Right now, you don't have public spaces. They're occupied by migrants in tents. Pleasures
a
as
public
simple as a walk
right
in the
now.
park or watching your children again play in a little league game.
It's just
will
like
come roaring back,
it
and they're gonna
almost.
come back
I mean,
very
he
quickly.
attributes
Your
all the
lifestyle
homelessness
and
to
American
the
dream
migrant
will be with you
crisis,
once again. We're
when in
gonna bring
fact
it
it's
back, the
obviously
American
born out
dream.
of
You don't have an
material
American dream,
conditions
right?
and the fact
the
that
housing costs. There's a direct
housing
relation
costs.
between
your
rising rents
children
and
your
and the
country
home
will
and
be even
the size
prouder
of the
of
homeless
you.
population.
Years ago,
Yeah.
it's bad for the people who need help, and it's bad for the people of our city, and it's a horrible, horrible way to live. I want to work in partnership with your local leaders, Democrats, pretty much all, and move the severely mentally ill off your streets and back into a place where they can get help and the help that they
jail
desperately need.
put them.
Yeah, which by the way,
They put them all in Rikers, and when they talk about people being in and out, it's because they take people with severe mental illnesses who have no recourse, that have zero support systems in society, then are invariably and very often left to the streets, and then they're just they just call the police on them because there's no health care, there's no social safety net, and they just go in and out of Rikers every time. And then as the weather gets cold, a lot of them intentionally go to Rikers because they have no other place to go and need a warm meal. I mean, this is a cycle that we see over and over and over again because we've systematically defunded any sort of public healthcare system. And in New York City specifically, we had a really robust network of public hospitals. We still do have public hospitals. Oh, and here's Ruben Diaz, who is a notorious homophobe, misogynist, local elected official, father of the former borough president, but they actually have very different set of politics in terms of how they enacted their policies.
I used to be city council member. Today I'm
He was
here
my city councilman.
for various reasons. I want to tell AOC.
Oh, here we go. What's up? What's up?
he loves it.
He does love it.
This morning, she intended to become a prophet.
Oh, it's because
And
it was
she
raining
said-
this morning, and I said God is good.
Even God doesn't want
He's
talk in
a
the
pastor.
He's a
Because
pastor.
it's going
He's a
to
pastor,
rain.
and he
Oh
has
my
all these he has this network of churches
Madam Prophet
that he has-
AOC,
that he has. Here, I'll let him say what
Listen-
he
you
says.
have
let him
become
cook.
a false prophet.
False prophet.
Look at what a beautiful day. That means that not only you guys want Trump in the Bronx, because if we're gonna measure that for the weather, then I would say humbly that even God wants you in the Bronx.
This guy's awesome.
Yeah. I think I gotta
Nassau
bounce
County,
soon.
The county executive, Nassau
Okay.
County, Bruce.
Thank you so much
Blakeman.
for
Come up,
having me
Bruce,
on.
for a second.
Appreciate
Come
it.
up, Bruce.
Thank you for coming on. We're also fundraising right now. Creators for Palestine, like a bunch of
Oh, amazing.
yeah, like 50 plus YouTubers have gotten together to raise money for numerous charities that are currently working on the ground. And we've raised 63,000 so far.
That's incredible.
With a goal of $1 million, which you guys can also donate to. And
Yeah, totally.
thank you so much for coming on. And you're very tapped into what's going on online. So I'm glad we were able to do this, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again soon, maybe
Totally.
under better circumstances and not just like listening to Trump ramble.
Yeah, 100%. Maybe we'll set up another gaming stream soon. But thank you so much for having me on, Hasan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, and we're happy to be supportive and amplify any fundraising as well. Shout out to you guys for launching Creators for Palestine, and thanks to everyone who's also been chipping in to help out with that, because as we know, there's just horrible unfolding genocide that we've got going on right now, and we have to do everything we can from a grassroots level to a policy level to change it up. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Bye.